There's only 24 hours in a day. I got a pair of earbuds and I wish there was a way that I could know just what I want to listen to. There's 150,000 shows that I'm not sitting through. When the world is dark and boring, let us do your exploring. Pod on pod. Pod on pod.
Welcome to Pod on Pod, a guide to the world of podcasts, because it's not your daddy's radio. We're your hosts.
I'm Josh.
I'm Joel, and this week on Pod, we are talking about guys we
Yup.
We're getting dirty.
About guys
Not we I mean, well, we didn't. First of all, there are no guys that I've not that there's anything wrong with that. And Josh stays silent. I like it. Mystery in the podcast.
No, you just came real hard on that issue.
You were like, I didn't know we were going to discuss that.
Yeah.
So what's this show about, Josh?
It is two comedians. They are the comedy duo Sorry About Last Night, who come together and generally interview a guy that they've slept with, and they get to ask questions about they get to kind of ask questions, number one, that you wish you probably would have asked when you were sleeping with somebody, but also it's the thought of what is a slut? What's the definition of a slut? Because it's the anti-slut shaming podcast. And if your definition of a slut is, oh, you know, somebody who sleeps around, sure. Why? Guys don't get called sluts.
No. In fact, guys, it's almost rewarded for sexual activity, even from a pretty young age. Like, you be patted on the back. Good for you. Even go back to when we were kids. What was the hot TV show? Dawson's Creek. A major plot line in the first season was Dawson's best friend having an affair.
See, I went straight, who's the boss?
Oh, nice. All right. Dawson's best friend having an affair with the teacher. What was the deal in Who's the Boss? Did somebody have an affair with a teacher?
No, but I always thought there was like the
the
tension
girl had to
between
be,
the girl. Yeah.
Like her dates were scrutinized very, very hard, and the boy was sort of free to do whatever he wanted to do. Yeah, absolutely. There is a distinct dichotomy in the way that men and women are treated as far as their sexual proclivity and discussions of their sexuality. And so for that, I was excited to check out this show. I was also excited to check out this show because we had not done an explicit review yet. You and I had talked about it a couple of times, and you were like, if we're going to talk about this show, especially since we're going to have to keep naming the title occasionally, this is going to have to be one where we let ourselves off the cuff. So there might not be a million curse words in here, but we're going to talk about what they talk about. And that means either explicit vulgarities or at least adult words that we would never talk about on this show normally.
Oh, yeah. My favorite moment from the podcast, or my favorite line, I think has two beeps in it. Like just to be able to say what my favorite line of the show would have to be like, beep, beep.
So, in case you haven't already gotten the hint, in case you didn't notice with the explicit tag that was put on this show, this is a show that you don't want to listen to with your kids in the car. So, there you go. Warning is on you now.
Unless you want to have a conversation with your child.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you this. You could play them a little bit of the beeped version, which is also available today in the feed. It is called the Guys We Effed censored version. You can download that and listen to it, and I don't think you're going to be able to make heads or tails of most of our conversation there. So, who hosts this show, Josh? You said two female comics. They call themselves Sorry About Last Night. Corinne Fisher.
Yep.
And Christina Hutchinson.
Yes, don't even try to spell Christina.
Yeah, there's several Y's and there's a K at the beginning. I had never seen Christina spelled that way. I don't mean to make fun of her, but I had never seen it spelled that way. I was like, so we're doing it like that now.
Yeah.
All right. Did you know either one of these ladies before the show?
Nope.
How did you find the show? You suggested the show for us.
Man, I can't remember if I heard about them on another podcast I was listening to. Because this is the way my week goes with podcasting. I try to keep up with the shows that I'm already subscribed to. I then fit in the one or two shows that are assignment shows for that week. And then I try to always try another show just to see if I have something new to pitch, right? Because I pretty much pitched every show I've already listened to. So I have to keep researching, have to keep trying to find a new show. And I think that's how I came upon this one.
So this show show. This show right here. This
I knew this was going to happen.
Well, I figure since we're off the cuff, I might as well throw some out there. The way that we talk about podcasts here on Pod on Pod is we break them down by discussing their host likability, the production values, the audio quality, and the content itself. We've already told you what the show is about. 2 female comics talk about their lives, especially their sex lives, and many of the episodes, if not the vast majority of the episodes, the guest on the podcast is a guy they used to
Yeah.
I think
Or
it's
currently.
I think it's a brilliant idea. I really do. And you said at the beginning, they get to ask the questions that you'd like to ask to someone that you're currently sexually involved with, but you don't get to do. I mean, sometimes you get to in a marriage.
Well, you should.
You have a relationship that lasts 20, 30 years or something. You can really delve into each other. But so much of the time, especially early on in your relationship physically, you don't have that emotional trust or longevity with each other to be able to sort of to ask the weird question. You know what I mean? Like, why do you do this? Would you mind if I wanted to do that? Et cetera, et cetera. These girls ask those questions to the guys.
I always love it whenever it's like, you did this or you wanted me to do this. And that was kind of weird.
He's like, yeah, that's the one normally that pushes them over the line, or whatever. Like, that's how I know this relationship ain't gonna last. When I pull that one out and they go, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff, though. All right, so that's the content. That's what the show is actually about. And the format is a very free-flowing conversation. They just sort of chat. The 2 of them open the show. They do a, what's going on in our lives
like a cold
right
open.
now. Yeah,
Sure.
a little monologue almost, except it's a dialogue.
I feel like every one of those has the question, when was the last time you masturbated?
Yeah, lots of times
All the
they
time.
do.
All the time they're talking. Here's the thing. I can't figure out what draws me to the show. Is it just that it's 2 women talking about sex and I'm a pervert?
Yes.
Okay. Or is it the nature or is it the fascination in which they talk about sex? Because growing up or being around women or whatever, it's always like, oh, girls don't talk like that. Women don't talk about sex like that. That's your locker room mentality. And they're talking about it just like you do with your friends in a locker room with your guy friends. So it's kind of it's a weird, in my head, it's like, I'm like, girls don't talk like that. Or girls aren't supposed to talk like that. I think that's probably coming just from, my Southern handicap, really.
Yes. Yeah, perhaps so. It doesn't matter in a podcast generally, but if you look at the cover art, these 2 are both very attractive girls.
Oh.
You don't agree? You don't think they're both very attractive?
No, I'm not saying that they're not attractive, but here's what this was kind of like a little sticking point when I'm listening to it because they say they're the anti-slut shaming podcast, right? That artwork is photoshopped.
What do you mean?
They even say it on an episode or 2 that, we look like that, but we don't really look like that.
Oh, they're both accentuated?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
It's been photoshopped. And I was like, man, that's a hard position to be in, to be the anti-slut shaming podcast, and then to Photoshop yourself more appealing. And are they doing it to appeal to a male audience, or are they doing it to appeal to a female audience, or is it something they just didn't care? That's just the way things are done.
I think this whole show, in some ways, is about owning their own sexuality. There's nothing wrong with the way that they act.
Sure.
That's their belief. And it's my prerogative if I want to Photoshop my photos so that I look sexier in my profile or on my, the image of my podcast. It's my prerogative if I don't. And you need to deal with it as the recipient of that. And if it's not for you, then don't listen, don't watch, don't come see my shows.
And that's the beauty about podcasts, man.
Indeed. Like, it is an on-demand medium, which means if you don't have the demand for it, then feel free to pursue another avenue. And that is really, really cool. I like that there is, as you said, this voice that I don't hear in my own life.
Yeah, no.
I've known women like this, a few, but none of them had podcasts. None of them let me listen to them talk for an hour, a week or whatever in this open way. It's a fascinating look. There is a piece of it that is prurient interest, i.e. it's titillating to hear a woman talk about sex in such an open way. But most of it, I don't think, is about titillation. I think most of it is about examination.
Okay. I think at this point we need to say this: they are not talking sexy.
No,
because I don't want people to be confused.
No.
This is not a sexy talk podcast. They are bluntly and expressively talking about sex or gender or whatever, and they're not doing it in a clinical way.
Yeah, it's not that time when we were making love on a regular basis, and when you would put your penis inside my vagina, I always found it very pleasurable.
Right, they're not talking like that.
No.
But they're also not talking about,
fucking,
so guys, like,
no.
yesterday the boy came over. Like, they're not doing that. Like, it's
they make
just a
jokes.
conversation. Yeah.
They're talking about and all of those things too, and all of the. Well, they're just bearing what it is to be a woman and to be held to these weird expectations, to want to take advantage of some of the things that society sort of looks at you as a woman. They like the fact that they can go to a bar and get free drinks, for instance.
Yeah, that's
Even
fantastic. I would love it.
For some feminists, I think that's an issue. I don't want to play into the way that society has set this system up. They don't have any problem taking advantage of it in that way. At the same time, they understand, they're enlightened enough and educated enough and like self-aware enough to understand that that's a choice they're making, to live inside that part of the system and rebel against other parts of it. And for all of that, it rises above just girls talking about their sex lives. Is that fair?
Yeah. I think it's very fair.
All right. So let's talk about how they put this thing together. That's all sort of the content. What about the production values? I love their intro, their theme music. Okay, so the show starts with, they say, I'm Corinne, I'm Kristen, I'm Christina, and this is Guys We And then it's like a hip-hop dance remix of them saying that a couple of times, them saying...
Guys We
Yeah. Sorry about last night. All of those with a little beat behind it. It is very catchy. It sticks in your head. And also, right up front, you get that this show is going to be frank and honest and in your face.
Yeah.
Like, that's all right there in the theme song. I think that's powerful. What about the audio quality, the rest of the show, the interviews themselves? I say the interviews, the recordings themselves. Pretty solid.
So here's the deal. They were with a network. Okay, and it was the Comedy Club New York Labs or whatever. I don't remember what it was. So I think they had a place at the Comedy Club to record, right? But then what they did is they went and did an Indiegogo, a crowdfunding thing to raise money to buy equipment so then they could leave the network and go independent. So there's going to be at some point, from going to the studio to the equipment that they bought and recording it that way, which allowed them a lot of freedom to move and go interview people like they go and interview Andy Dick. But those are all going to have some issues inherent with them.
I didn't have any issues with any of the audio until the one episode I listened to in particular was with their BFF. They had both their best friends in, and at that point, with 4 people, 2 of whom are not used to being on podcasts, that was pretty clear. There was too much crosstalk. There was too much room noise and all of that sort of stuff, and it just got very, very messy. It was hard to follow the conversation. Otherwise, that was a really great episode. Some of my favorite moments come from that, but the vast majority of this is totally listenable. There are some issues now. It was better in the beginning, but I think over time, as this show continues, they'll be able to sand those rough edges off and get back to a really high quality. What about the host likability? Corinne and Christina, you got a preference?
No.
I like Christina better, but maybe that's just because she's got great big, as she says.
And I'm pretty. Is Christina the one that's in a relationship? I believe she is.
Yes, Christina's the one with a boyfriend.
Could be, yeah. I mean, so Corinne sometimes will be like, I'll pass something up. I was just feeling fat. Or so like she'll be real negative about herself, and because she's negative about herself, I think that negativity tends to bleed over with just, how people may or may not feel about her. Maybe just enough to be like, I like Christina better.
I'll tell you this. I think they're really, really good balances for each other. Like, we listen to a lot of shows. One of the things that I think about a lot is, do their voices sound different as when you got a 2-person podcast? Because it's so easy to get them confused. Corinne and Christina sound close enough alike that you got to listen to several episodes before you start picking them apart. But their attitudes, their personalities are quite different. And it makes for interesting conversation. It makes for... They ask different questions than one another when they're talking to their guests.
Well, here's something I thought about too is, What if this was two guy comedian hosts and it was called Girls We F***?
It would be a very, very different show. Not a show that I would be interested in.
Weird, right? Though, like.
Yeah. Well, here's the there. You could not have a show where the two male hosts have the attitudes about their conquests and say some of the things about their exes that these two girls do without it coming off as very misogynistic. But that has to do, that's just, we've talked before about if you're a white guy, doing a certain thing is racist. If you're a black guy, doing that same thing is not necessarily racist. And the reason is because of the difference in position of power of those groups. It is a male-dominated society. The whole world is. It's a patriarchal society, and almost all of the people in authority have misogynistic tendencies at some level. So a woman can act this way, and it's fine. A man couldn't.
Right. So do you think that just speaks to how marginalized a lot of these different minority groups are, whether it's women or black or whatever? Do you
homosexuals, yes.
Do you think that it's viewed that way, the same way like South Park can say the stuff South Park does because it's cartoons, it's not real, we don't care, that's how marginalized,
yes.
So because that gender has been marginalized, whenever they say it or whenever they have a podcast like this and it's making a stance and they're saying these points of views, that if it were to be a guy podcast doing it, obviously they couldn't get away with saying the things. And so I think it's really cool in finding the power in that you have and using that voice.
You and I talked when we discussed the Savage Lovecast show about the fact that Dan sometimes, especially in his monologue, Dan Savage, can be over the line sometimes for somebody. He rails so hard for his side of things and for his opinion and for people's rights that he can almost come across as offensive. And I said, you got to have all of those levels of voices. You have to have somebody doing it slowly and calmly and quietly. You have to have somebody, let's burn the building down and build a new one. And all of those voices are needed for progress to happen. I think the same thing is true here. We need a podcast like this with two girls that are being brash and bold, and it almost rises to the level of like parody almost, because this attitude is not allowed in society at large, right? And so it's almost comedic when we're presented with women that act this way. And I think that's powerful, because
which is also shown in the cover art where they're like drinking scotch and smoking a stogie and playing poker.
Precisely. And so they play
have these
stereotypes,
huge pearls and necklaces and stuff on.
And the idea is that there will come a day where women's voices are valued in society. They really are equals with men as far as society is concerned. And at that point, it'll no longer be okay for women to act like this in a podcast.
So enjoy it while it lasts, ladies.
That's right. I think it's some really interesting stuff, and I'm really glad you brought this show up. I'm really glad you suggested it. I enjoyed getting to know Christina and Corinne through it, and I'm going to stay subscribed to the show. I think it's really interesting. So we've talked a lot about it. We've broken down the host likability. We talked about production values, the content, and the audio quality. Let's tell you some of our favorite moments. I'll tell you one of mine real quick. The girls are talking about getting their waxed. Christina says that her waxer has the claim to fame that she's waxed the Olsen twins as well.
What?
Yeah, I know, right? Corinne says that she can't imagine that they actually have any hair. Like, it must be like a dandelion. You just hold them up
and just
blow on their and the hair falls off. I thought that was hilarious. Like, I imagined literally like somebody grabbing the Olsen twins by like the neck and holding them upright and just like blowing their hair off.
If you get them all off, you get to make a wish.
Exactly. You get to make a wish. Precisely. I was like, oh, God, that's hilarious.
That's great. One of mine was they're talking to Andy Dick, right?
This is a very recent episode, right?
Yeah. And
now they haven't Andy Dick, have they?
No. But Andy is, which is this, it's a crazy episode, but Andy's nuts. But he's dating a woman again, right? And they talked earlier about like Amber Alerts, right? And one of the girl, I can't remember which one said this, but they said, yeah, my is going to abduct your dick. Right? And I was like, oh, wow. Like, I love the concept of that statement, but it just felt wrong. Like it gave me the shivers, right? And I was like, man, that's exactly how girls have to feel when some dude like says, whatever.
Yeah, let me take that.
Yeah. Let me get up in them guts. Whatever it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of like really aggressive.
That's not attractive. That's not a turn on at all. And whenever she said that, I was like, wow, like I never thought I would say hearing a girl say something about my being in her would ever be a turn off. Kind of was
something, and this is I can't believe that I can't believe on this podcast I'm about to say this phrase. This is what this episode does to me. But something as simple as a guy saying aggressively, and it happened a couple of different episodes on this podcast. I heard one of their boyfriends or one of their ex-boyfriends use the phrase, "I'm gonna eat your," and the way that they said it was sort of like aggressively, and I was like, "What a terrible phrase! That sounds destructive."
Yeah.
Like cannibalistic even. Anyway. So little things like that a show like this can turn it on your head the way that you listen to it. Here's one more favorite moment. And this is a little funnier than talking about the violent ways men can attack women. They were discussing following and unfollowing people on Facebook. You know, the idea that you don't have to unfriend them so that you're like sending them a passive aggressive message that I don't like you anymore. You can just unfollow them. And they don't ever know that happens, but they go away from your newsfeed. So Corinne says, if you're tired of hearing them about their Crohn's or something. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. So
again, that's too specific.
Yeah.
For that not to be a real
yeah. She knows a friend who's about her Crohn's disease all the time. So there you go. That's a couple of our favorite moments. The elevator pitch for the show, which we do occasionally, this one's very simple. Sort of like our last review, we talked about grown-ups read things they wrote as kids, and it's all in the title. In this one, the combination of the title and the tagline.
Yep.
Guys, the anti-slut shaming podcast.
Boom.
That's it, man. That's if that's not for you, then that's fine. This show's not for you. But if that strikes your fancy, and here's a great example. The last episode of the show that I listened to, they got an email from a 15-year-old.
About the guy in class?
She was like a Nigerian who had immigrated?
No. This is a different one.
She was 14 or 15 years old. She had immigrated from Africa, and I believe she was Nigerian, but I could be wrong. She's living in the States now, and she's like 18, I think, at this time. But she is like completely frigid in a lot of ways. She's locked up and even scared of sexuality or even getting close and alone with a boy because she was, and it wasn't she wasn't raped, but she was molested. She was forced to give things like that with this one particular guy back in her home country when she was 13, 14, 15 years old. And the way that they talked her through that, and also the way that she expressed how empowering it was to hear two young women talk openly and honestly about the feelings that they have and the desires that they have and acting on those desires and that not making them shameful or hidden and not making them victims. Her being able to take back some of that on herself. And so this show can be very important for certain people, and I think it's amazing that it's out there.
Whenever they do get listener emails in or emails for advice, I think they crush it almost every time.
So let's get down to brass tacks here and rate this show. We give earbuds in. We don't give stars or thumbs up. We talk about earbuds. The max you can give a show individually is 2 earbuds, and we each get to rate it. We can do half earbuds if we want to as well, from 0 all the way up to 2. Where are you going to put this show, Josh?
For me, it's a 1.5.
I'm impressed with that. I got to tell you, I had originally wrote down 1.5, and over the course of this episode, I talked myself all the way up to a 2. It's not my favorite show. It's not really for me necessarily, though. I've learned a lot from listening to it. I look forward to listening to more episodes. I enjoy it. But I think for a certain group of people, this show can be every bit as helpful and every bit as empowering, every bit as a growth opportunity as the Savage Lovecast was. And I praised that one to the high heavens. I'm going to praise this one too. I really like what they're doing, and I think it's possible that for somebody, this could be the podcast. So it's a 2.0.
I like the podcast. I think the two hosts are fantastic. I think as a package, it's good. The reason it's not 2 for me is like, especially in the Andy Dick episode or whatever, like they will sometimes let an interviewee kind of run wild, and it's hard to listen to at points.
I think that has to do with their youth.
Yeah.
They're fairly new to podcasting too. This is not a very old show, so I think that
Their youth, how old do you think they are?
They're both in their like late 20s now, right? Like one of them's 25 and the other one's 28, something like that. 26, 28, 29, 27, something like that.
Yeah, like they're in their late 20s.
Yeah. But again, like I think they got time, man. They got time to grow as comedians. They got time to grow as podcasters. I think they've got a great beginning here, though. Absolutely. So that's our review of Guys We Where can you find them online? You can find them at sorryaboutlastnight.tumblr.com. You can also find them on SoundCloud and in iTunes and Stitcher by searching for Guys We. A very, very cool show, and I'm so thankful that you found it, Josh.
Right on.
A couple of quick reminders. You can go to our website, podonpod.com, and not only can you find all of our reviews there, you can find links for our Facebook page and our Twitter account. You can email us or contact us through the website and let us know what you'd like us to review in the future. You can also now shop, Josh. You can buy stuff at Pod on Pod. Did you know that?
I did now.
Yeah, that's right. Shop.podonpod.com, and there's links in the show notes too. But click that link. You can find a lot of cool gear. You can get T-shirts, you can get stickers or iPhone cases and all sorts of fun stuff.
And if you're not going to go to our website and get more information, and you're not going to go shop our website, cool, completely fine, keep listening. But what you should do is go to the website or go to the iTunes account of your favorite show and give them a big hug by reviewing them.
Great idea, Josh. Hey, before we get out of here for this week, I do want to mention, and we have been falling down on this a little bit. I got a notice on Twitter about a week ago or so. Somebody asked, "Hey, make sure that you say how long the show is and how often it comes out." We don't always say that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
This week we reviewed Guys We. This show comes out weekly. And it is about an hour and a half an episode. Some of them go all the way up to 2 hours. Some of them are closer to an hour,
right.
But about an hour and a half an episode. That's what you're getting with Guys We from Sorry About Last Night, Corinne Fisher and Christina Hutchinson. Thanks to them for a great show. You got anything else you want to add, Josh?
Just thanks to whoever tweeted out that tip for us and keeping us on our toes.
Amen. And we've got some listener feedback, but we're going to get to that next week. And what are we going to review next week? It's Easter weekend. For that, we're going to go a little religious, also to cleanse our palate after this one, I think. I don't know. Maybe we owe you an apology if you're a more conservative listener. So we're going to go in a different direction. A really cool show that I found. I'm excited about getting into this one in depth, and I'm excited to see what you think about it, too. It's called That God Show. You can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, and other places. Look it up, and we'll review it for you next week right here on Pod on Pod. We're your hosts.
I'm Josh.
I'm Joel, and this has been the podcast.
Are you wanting something funny? Are you wanting something smart? A show on astral projection or the history of art? Do you want to learn a language or how to play guitar? Just leave it up to Joel and Josh. Pod on Pod. Pod on Pod.
Pod on Pod is a proud member of the Procast Network, a Procreate production. Procreate is a community of artists in film, music, the digital arts, and the fine arts that helps them connect and collaborate on projects. You can find out more at teamprocreate.com. Also be sure to check out one of our other great shows like Movie Buzzed. The Movie Buzzed podcast is exactly what it sounds like. It's a place for friends to get together, watch a good movie, and catch a good buzz. Every episode, your host Zach will be joined by a special guest or 5 to have some fun. Whether it's pop culture, movie trivia, random rants about politics, or reading comments from astrophysicists, Movie Buzzed is where you'll find your friends and a good buzz waiting for you. Our musical guest this week is Campfires and Constellations.
Right down, tell me
what's on your mind. I said, appreciate the